Hi there, thanks for clicking on this video. David with Beyond the Blast Doors. Excited to talk about Solo: A Star Wars Story. Safe place though, don't worry. Spoiler-free review right now, and as you can tell, I'm solo for the solo review because Jesse's in the theater right now seeing this movie. David is out of town. He and I saw the movie together last night, Thursday night, that preview night for Solo: A Star Wars Story, and it was incredible. In our hometown that we're in right now, it wasn't a big turnout for the late show. That's the typical habit of where we live. So we basically had the theater to ourselves, and we had such a great time from start to finish, laughing through this movie, going on a real Star Wars story, and this reinforces. If this movie does anything, it reinforces that these Star Wars stories is where the Disney era of Star Wars is really going to shine the most. Because I loved Rogue One and I love this Solo movie. I still love Rogue One more, but this is definitely a different, grittier tale. Maybe not grittier than Rogue One, but just a really nice compliment to that shelf of movies. So if maybe you're like me and you kind of struggle with the Last Jedi and the Force Awakens, well, maybe you can get really latch on to these standalone stories. And if not, hey, there's the cartoons, and if not, there's the comics, and if not, there's the novels, and if not, there's the games. I mean, it just keeps going on and on. But we're here to talk about Solo: A Star Wars Story, and it's exciting to say that there is some good news so far at the box office. Obviously we're at the very beginning of Memorial Day weekend here, but $14.1 million already from preview showings, so that's really exciting for the movie. Exciting to see where this ends up, because coming into this weekend, we're being told that the box office predictions are saying $170 million opening weekend for Solo, and now there's reports that might be dipping. So I really hope that fans turn out. Maybe fans are going today, which is Saturday. Maybe fans are waiting to go Monday when this movie drops. But it is such a thrilling movie, and we're going to get to talk about it right now in this moment. So let's start. First things first, so we want to know about how our lead characters do and how do the actors do. And I think Alden Ehrenreich not just rocks it out of the park because there were several moments that I think are defining moments for Han Solo in this movie. And I reacted to it as, oh man, Han is so smooth there. It's really nice because I didn't think about Alden, and I didn't think about, that's what Harrison Ford would do. That's what Han Solo would do. And there's these moments along the way. The movie starts here, and there's a kind of a time jump, and it kind of goes where you're seeing a lot of the action in the TV spots, which is nice because we're getting to see that development, the maturity of Han Solo, the mannerisms, the wit, how Han interacts with Chewie is a real treat. This isn't a spoiler. I know the Star Wars show talked about this a bit, but Han and Chewie, they don't have the buddy-buddy relationship at the very beginning when they meet, and it was really fun to watch that flourish through this movie. And I mentioned Chewie. Chewie is a legitimate character in this movie, and that's something that we haven't seen in a Star Wars movie to date. You see Chewie stand out a bit more in The Force Awakens. I think about that final scene where, Han dies and Chewie goes on the Wookiee rampage. This is truly a movie where Chewbacca is a lead character, and there is emotional gravitas with this role where you feel empathetic for Chewbacca, where you're excited for Chewbacca, you're wowed by Chewbacca, and just great job by these two actors to develop this relationship. And you really have a sense after this movie of, wow, Han and Chewie have really covered a lot of ground to get to where you find them in A New Hope. And so I've talked about Han, I've talked about Chewie, and again, trying to keep it somewhat generic because I don't want to spoil anything for you if you haven't seen this movie. What I hope we're doing right now is, if you've seen the movie, this is a great reflection of the movie that we've witnessed already. And if you haven't seen this movie, I want to excite you for it. If I haven't said anything that has excited you yet, which Alden Ehrenreich owning that role should excite you enough, let's talk about Donald Glover's Lando Calrissian, because there are so many new elements, so many new dynamics to that character that Donald Glover has added to Lando Calrissian. And it's really satisfying to watch this movie and see that charm, that wit, that seduction so early on in this movie when you experience Lando. And it's literally the first 5 words out of his mouth. I thought it was Billy D. Williams talking. It was incredible. And Lando only becomes more enjoyable throughout the film. I've heard some of my friends say already they're kind of surprised of how little of Lando there was. I thought he was in the movie quite a bit. It's not Han's. I mean, it is Han's movie. It's not Lando's movie, and I felt that he was in there quite a bit. And I don't think it was an overwhelming role. I don't think there was too much Lando. But I don't really find myself saying there wasn't enough Lando. I really enjoy how they play, how the Sabacc game, and how Han pulls off the win and gets a Falcon. It's maybe predictable. I didn't find it predictable, but it was witty, and it was a stunt that the movie just feels very 80s. More like 1970s to me. Like, it's definitely of that era. Like, it feels that way. And so the bit that's played there is, I think, pretty well executed. So Donald Glover, man, a couple of weeks ago, it was reported by a French publication that Kathleen Kennedy said that there would be a Lando spinoff, and then like hours later it came out that she was misquoted. But when you have Lando Calrissian, when you have Donald Glover playing Lando Calrissian, you've got to do more with that character. And we said this on episode 38 of Beyond the Blast Doors. If you haven't watched that yet, be sure you watch that right now. I'll put it up right here, the card to it that you can open up and pause this video, open up the tab, pause that, and come back to the review if you want. But when you have Donald Glover in your stack of actors, you have to use that as much as possible. He is one of the greatest all-around entertainers of our current era. And so, we know that Alden's been signed to multiple movies. I don't know the contract details about Donald Glover. The assumption is that he has been signed for multiple films already. I don't know if it's going to be a Lando spinoff. It would be interesting if we got a Solo spinoff. I will tell you, this movie kind of sets up to where a sequel could happen. And if it did, Ron Howard should be at the helm directing that movie without a doubt in my mind. But Lando just really, you understand, and I'm going to say this for every character. This movie, what it does is it gives you so much more appreciation going back. I rewatched Empire, and you have such a better understanding of now how Lando got here to Cloud City. I mean, it's not like directly referenced or anything, but it's just like, all this background now, and there's so much more weight and meaning behind certain statements. And maybe I'm just a real big fan of the franchise, and I want this to connect to this line, but it's really satisfying. And of course, you have Emilia Clarke playing Kira, and I'm not a big Game of Thrones person. I've been pretty open about that. I've never watched this series. I think I've watched the first episode, and that's it. I really enjoy her in this. You watch the TV spots, and it's like, man, I guess, she's a romantic interest. I guess that's what her role is. And it is, but she is so much more than that. Thandie Newton, definitely doesn't come across as the romantic interest. She's just awesome. She's killer in this movie, and they're two both strong but different female archetypes in this movie, and just very satisfying in different ways. I would say Emilia Clarke's character is very not suave, but she's elegant. I think elegant would be a very good word to describe her character. And Thandie Newton, she just knows how to shoot a gun. That's all I can say. Jonas Suotamo is the actor who plays Chewie, and he has played Chewbacca in Force Awakens. He has played him in The Last Jedi, and now here in Solo. And he is just a great talent to have in the mix with the Star Wars family because based on the interviews I've seen with him with the Star Wars show and E.T. and these other different entities, he definitely has a fandom. He is a fan of Star Wars, and he has appreciation for the franchise, and has worked with Peter Mayhew to develop the mannerisms and what was his approach. Peter Mayhew in early interviews would always talk about how he looked kind of at Chewie as kind of like a dog in a way, and he would kind of throw his head out. It's just really cool, and you can tell that Jonas just really has. He has it figured out. By Solo, he really has it figured out, and was so great at developing that relationship between him and Han and that resistance and how they overcome it. It's pretty spectacular. Woody Harrelson is Beckett, and it's a character that you haven't seen You haven't seen Woody play, which is really enjoyable. I was really worried that this was going to be a rehash of maybe a character or two that he's played in the past. Just let Woody be Woody. And what I'm happy to say is Woody isn't just Woody. Woody, to me, just feels right in the Star Wars galaxy. This feels like a true Star Wars character. And he was the one that I was worried about, because what I like about the original trilogy and what I like about even how Lucas approached the prequels, and I have to be fair, Disney did with the sequel trilogy, is when you get lesser-known actors to portray characters, their likeliness, that's just the character on screen. Like, when I think of Mark Hamill, I always go to Luke Skywalker and also the Joker, but mainly Luke Skywalker. When I think of Rey, Rey is Rey, and I'm not being like, oh, well, that's so. No, it's just Rey. Same thing with Finn. The same thing with Poe. I look at Poe and it's like, oh, well, that's not Oscar Isaac. That's Poe. So I think I've proven that point clearly enough. So I really enjoy how Woody was able to really immerse himself in this environment. It was really satisfying. As far as our villains here, Paul Bettany, I think he is a gangster villain, and doesn't have like the intimidation or the fear of like a Hutt. But I think as far as like the execution, I think it's well, because like there's like this moment of like suspense, which maybe isn't a word that I often apply to Star Wars, but there's this moment where he is with the gang, and I'm like on the edge of my seat, and I'm kind of slumping, and I feel uncomfortable as a viewer. Not uncomfortable that I think it's inappropriate. Like, I'm feeling the weight and the intensity of this scene, and so I think credit again there goes to Ron Howard, the way he shot that scene. Of course, the music complementing that. It's all just a really nice package. I think those are all the lead characters. Jon Favreau does the voice of Rio Durant. Love that character. I can't really go into any more of these characters, because the more I go into these characters, I think possible spoilers will arise. You're gonna like Warwick Davis's cameo. Warwick Davis, who was everyone's favorite Ewok in Return of the Jedi. He's got a pretty cool cameo. I'm going down the list. Yeah, I don't want to give anything away. So let's go ahead and just talk about how Ron Howard did with this movie, which I thought was really just sensational. What he did with this movie was created a sense of intimacy. When the moment was romantic, it felt like a fun, there's like a makeout scene, for example. It's just fun. Like you kind of feel like you're a part of it, which is kind of interesting in saying of itself. But it's just like there's that spirit. When Han is stressed, you feel it because of the close-up, the intense close-up. When Han is feeling cocky, it's kind of like that wider shot, a lot going on in the background. You kind of feel the air of Han Solo. When you see, the tensions between Han and Chewie, it's that angled medium shot. I work with cameras for my profession. I work in television broadcast, and what I do on the daily is kind of basic compared to what filmmakers do, but I have such an appreciation for the visual storytelling of this movie, and the visual storytelling of this movie by Ron Howard, I think, showcases another character that, it won't be labeled as a character, but the Millennium Falcon. That ship has so much personality. It's great to see where that ship starts out in the beginning and where it starts out in the end, and we've never seen the Falcon do things that it does in this movie. You see it in the one TV spot where it does a barrel roll and wipes out a TIE fighter. It's incredible. But not only is that a great sequence, start at the beginning of that sequence, and then there's that scene that you see in the one TV spot of the Imperial Star Destroyer just coming out through the clouds. It is a stunning moment, and I think there might have been 8 people in our theater. We live in a small town, so it's not like it's not part of the boycott that some people are trying to get for this movie. But everyone went, "Ooh, that was a very great scene to witness." There's that other scene that you've seen in the full trailer from the movie where it's like that tilt up, and you see the Star Destroyer in orbit or in the atmosphere being constructed, being assembled. Let me tell you, seeing that scene on the big screen was exceptional. The speeder chase is electric. It's funny because I think a lot of these chases get compared to the Return of the Jedi speeder chase and then the Attack of the Clones speeder chase. And, I think this one will rival those pretty darn well. But I think the pacing of this movie, and maybe you can see some scenes where it's like Ron Howard definitely had his thumb on that frame. but I never felt like I watched this movie and saw a scene that felt out of place, or something was said maybe off screen that felt out of place, or oh, that had to be kept from Phil Lord and Chris Miller. I didn't have that experience. It felt like one movie assembled by one director, and I mentioned Lord and Miller. They are credited on this movie as executive producers. So Ron Howard is the lone director, but both Phil Lord, Chris Miller are the executive producers on Solo: A Star Wars Story. So shout out to the lead characters, the lead actors, for just doing a tremendous job of bringing these characters to life on screen. And of course, Alden and Jonas, and I guess those are the really only two characters we have established in the original trilogy are Han and Solo. But being able to bring those characters back like 10, 15 years and give you, man, like, it's not an origin story, but it's definitely early on in their journey, and it's pretty cool to witness that. I'm satisfied. I really am satisfied, and I want to see this movie do well by box office, because by looking at the box office numbers, you see that there's a sense of confidence from the fans, and I don't want there to be a boycott. I don't think that the majority of fans are going along with that. I think you have a lot of internet trolls out there. If you love Star Wars, go see this movie. It's fun, and it's a great family adventure. I mean, there's laughs from beginning to end, and what I like about the humor in this movie is it feels like Star Wars humor. One of my biggest complaints about The Last Jedi is Rian Johnson put in a lot of humor that was not Star Wars humor, and it's like modern society humor. A prank phone call at the beginning to open up that movie. Are you serious? That's, to me, garbage. And second, is going to date that movie so badly. This movie feels like, this Han Solo movie feels like a true Star Wars story. If I were to rank Star Wars movies, I'm going to do it in two ways. First, the Disney-era movies. I'm going to say Rogue One. Then you have Force Awakens, Han Solo, and they could be 2 or 3 right now, and Last Jedi is 4th. This Han Solo movie is not in my top 5. It might be around like 8, or it might be like 7 or 8 on my list. It might even be like 6. It might even be 6. Empire Strikes Back. You have Rogue One, A New Hope, Revenge of the Sith. This is where it gets tricky. Empire, Rogue One, A New Hope, Revenge of the Sith, Return of the Jedi, which I think I'm buying in the argument more that people say Return of the Jedi is maybe the better, like, it's like the best tale of the original trilogy. But it just doesn't compare to Empire. Empire is always going to be believed to be the best Star Wars movie. If I'm there, 6 would maybe be Force Awakens, Solo, Phantom Menace, Last Jedi, Attack of the Clones. Last Jedi just didn't really hold up for me. Well, that's okay. That's my ranking. And I guess if the very last one would be the animated movie, the 2008 theatrical release of the Clone Wars movie. It just doesn't hold up to those other ones. But that's my list. And what I really like for you to tell me is what you thought about this movie. Try and keep the spoilers out of the comments for right now. I'll tell you this. In a couple of days, we are moving this theater to our new recording location. Moving the studio to the new recording location, and when we get all that set back up, the first thing we plan to do is doing a spoiler galore breakdown of this movie and talking about our favorite moments, our favorite cameos, and what this movie sets up next, because my goodness, the last 10 minutes of this movie sets up a whole heck of a lot for something to come in the near future. We are hoping it's in the near future. So right now in the comments, just comment, hey, have you seen the movie? And if so, do you like it? You don't like it? If you haven't seen the movie, will you? Will you not? I hope this review gave you some cool insight into this movie. I hope you are excited. I hope that if you have seen this movie, you'll go back and see it again. And I hope if you have not seen this movie yet, I hope that you take the time to go watch Solo: A Star Wars Story in the theaters, because I think this is a success for Disney, for Lucasfilm, and I think the best thing that they did was take a moment and and unfortunately removing Lord and Miller, but bringing in Ron Howard. I think Ron Howard was able to redirect visually this movie. He was able to kind of course correct some of the approaches from the actors. Like I said, Alden nails it. Donald Glover nails it. It's so great to see Woody Harrelson. Emilia Clarke does a fantastic job. It's just a really fun Star Wars story. It's a really fun ride. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes of laughs and adventure and excitement and fantasy and space opera. And it's everything you like about Star Wars. Even like the creatures and that lived-in world set, all of that. It's a Star Wars movie, and I hope you enjoy it. So I'm going to be looking forward to reading the comments down below, and be on the lookout next week for our spoiler talk of Solo, A Star Wars Story. That's it for this review. I'll see you soon. May the Force be with you.